Joining Mike today is the anchor of Last Call and senior national correspondent for CNBC, Brian Sullivan. Thank you, Brian. How you doing? Good.
John, that was a great talk. I did not have Djibouti on my country mention card. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see you. It's great to be back in Oklahoma City. The irony is I've been to Oklahoma City twice, and both times I was in this building. It used to be a GE building, and I did something on wind. I mentioned that last night, and some people hissed at me, which I find funny because, and I think we'll talk about this, Mike, we're going to need a lot of energy, I think. And you talk about balance, and that's what this conversation is going to be about. It's about balance. And when I see Phoenix as the 6th largest city in America, when I see Houston will probably be the largest city in America if we live out our natural lifespans, and they're hot and people want 5-bedroom homes and pools and electric cars, the demand for everything is going to surge. What is Chevron's role in that, and how do you find balance?
Well, first of all, thank you to Mr. Ham and everybody here at the Institute for putting on this great conference and for the invitation today. Let's start with demand. You talked about demand. I was at an event over the weekend where I was talking to some people that are heavily investing in AI. And if you look at the amount of power consumption that is going to be required to drive the servers to train these advanced models that are now becoming such a rapidly growing part of our economy. It's just one more example of the fact that demand for energy inexorably goes up. It goes up as a part of progress and advancement in the quality of life, in technology, in everything that we do. And energy underpins it all. If you go back 150 years, we lived an agrarian life. People lived short lives. And the quality of life was nothing like it is today. And affordable, reliable energy has enabled the things that we all take for granted today, but which people in other parts of the world still only aspire to. And so that demand is inexorable, and it will grow. So that's point one. Point two is we need it all. And it's become a bit trite, I think, to say I'm in favor of all of the above. And so sometimes the way I turn that around is I say, listen, when I hear somebody that starts to rule things out, I'm hearing somebody who's not serious about energy. We can't have nuclear. We can't have oil and gas. We need to eliminate fossil fuels. Those are not serious people if they're talking about the topic of energy and the topic of climate, for that matter. So we're going to need many different solutions. There's going to be a role for them all. There is no silver bullet in here. EVs are great, but EVs are not going to be the silver bullet. They're a part of a very complex solution set that we need to build out. And last thing is, you mentioned the word balance, which I like to talk about a lot. When you're looking at energy, and the prior speaker touched on this, I thought, in a number of different points in his remarks, affordability really matters. And you see it here when prices go up and all of a sudden the president gets concerned about it. You go to the developing world and affordability matters because if you can't afford energy, it doesn't change your life. Reliability matters. We've seen that in Europe, where when the reliable supply of energy was threatened, all of a sudden it became priority number one. But if you're in the developing world and the lights are only on 3 hours a day, you don't build hospitals, you don't build schools, you don't build an economy that can really deliver a better quality of life. And then, of course, we all have a stake in a cleaner environment. And some of the most ardent environmentalists I know are people that work in this industry that care about it deeply, that have spent their entire careers finding ways to deliver energy in ways that have less impact and have makes less environmental consequences. But you have to balance all three of those as you talk about strategy for a company or as you talk about policy for a government.
Energy literacy, something we talked about in our interview up there, which is, Norway, obviously, an oil-rich nation, or maybe one of the richest nations in the world, highest electric vehicle penetration rate in the world. I think it's 80% in Norway, but yet their oil demand has remained flat. And how is that possible? And I think the lessons for us here, there is this narrative, and I didn't get into energy because I love the hydrocarbon. I got in because I started to dig in and realized, oh my God, I didn't understand how much power it takes to do everything that we want and are trying to do, AI, data centers, whatever it may be. How do we increase the energy literacy in this country to make people understand that in a lot of places, Djibouti, wherever it may be, the lights don't always come on, and the heat doesn't always work, and the air conditioning doesn't exist?
Well, we're sitting here at the Ham Institute, and I heard during Harold's opening remarks acknowledgement of a number of different institutions of higher education that are outstanding in energy education. I think we have to go back further into our system. Our children aren't learning the basics of science and math in the K through 12 levels. And one of the challenges is the laws of physics and thermodynamics and economics are incredibly stubborn. And when you're in the energy business, you run into those each and every day. And that is your challenge, is how do you do this within the boundaries of those laws? We need our young people to actually understand, they have good grounding in science and math, and increase the level of understanding and fluency on energy, environment, climate from a very young age, and then build it out further at the university level.
You know, I was here, I told you, because of wind, no hissing, and the governor remarked, Oklahoma is the third largest wind generator in the United States. What's amazing to some of the folks I live in New Jersey, and I'll talk to some very smart friends, and I say, well, if you want to see wind turbines, because we have this thing going on offshore, off the coast of New Jersey and Rhode Island, and there are all these fights now. Come to Oklahoma, come to Texas, come to Iowa, because you know what you need to have a wind turbine? You need wind. And I feel like sometimes we try to put square pegs in round holes in this country, where you've got a lot of hydro up in the Pacific Northwest, you've got a lot of wind here, gas here. How do we, from a policy perspective, maybe also make people realize, to your idea of balance, Mike, that it's not one size fits all for everybody? Use what you have.
Yeah, in the U.S., and then I want to touch on international for a moment, but in the U.S., one of the reasons I think we've not had good energy policy is because we're spoiled. We have an abundance of energy resources in this country: coal, oil, gas, wind, hydro, agricultural products that can support biofuel. You go around, and this country is one of the top 2 or 3 producers of virtually every energy resource there is. We've got this tremendous capability in the energy sector, and then we've got the biggest economy. So on the demand side and on the supply side, we've got abundance, and we've got free markets and the rule of law, and business kind of sorts most of this out. And so you can have bad policy, and the people in this room manage to work within bad policy and still deliver good products. If you get to most other countries in the world, energy is absolutely vital to their economy. You either have countries that are huge importers, think Japan, and they have to be smart about energy because it's fundamental to their policy, or they're big exporters. And so think of countries in the Middle East or West Africa that are big energy exporters. They're sharp on energy policy because it is so central to their economy. And it's different in every part of the world, to your point. And so, to me, the key is to recognize that countries are at different stages of evolution. They've got different resource foundations, and they've got different social priorities. We need to work within those confines to help them achieve their goals, and not have unelected bureaucrats or people that go to conferences set the priorities for every country in the world.
You got to talk about Europe, and I've been there a number of times for CNBC, but even before the war began, talking about the issues were clear before Putin's invasion of Ukraine and the horrible war that's going on there, and Nord Stream. And Germany in particular should provide a roadmap in many ways of, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, cautious energy policy mistakes. And a Germany which, if anybody hasn't been, and I've been there a number of times talking about it, and was one of the first LNG shiploads that come over, and one LNG ship will power about 1 million German homes for a month. And people were literally, they could tell it's the loud American, right, broadcasting, thanking me via the United States for providing energy, because there are people who literally could have frozen to death. What and thankfully we've had 2 very mild winters. What lessons can we learn from Europe and Germany in particular?
Well, I think Germany is a very instructive case study. For 2 decades, Germany's pursued their Energiewende policy, which was a very, very green policy, heavily government subsidized, and a big push into renewables. And of course, as everybody in this room understands, the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine. Their base load was natural gas from Russia. And they had an over-reliance on a single source of gas supply. The politics of that, very clear today. I think there were some along the way that recognized the risk in the way that Russia has used natural gas in particular as a tool previously. But with the war and the things that we've seen right now, you see the consequences of an unbalanced approach to energy policy, where a focus only on environment and not a focus on also balancing it with affordability and reliability/security created this big vulnerability. And the economy now is dealing with it. You saw it on the charts in the prior speaker's presentation. And I still think there's a bit of a disconnect. I talked to people in the policy circles in Europe, and they think because last year they had a lot of Russian gas already in storage before the pipeline got blown up. They had a sharp decrease in industrial demand, and they had a very mild winter, and the worst didn't come to pass. They think they're through it. And those 3 things are not guaranteed to repeat.
They're not through it.
And you find now that European buyers, well, we might want LNG for 5 years, but not for 15 years. And I'm still not quite sure that the realities have come home in the policy circles. You talk to people in industry, steel, cement, petrochemicals, fertilizer, manufacturing of any type, and they recognize the vulnerability they have. They recognize some of the other challenges in these industries in Europe before, and now you have high and at-risk energy supplies, and they're talking about moving business to the Middle East, to the United States, to China, which is not a good thing for Germany.
Well, and I think Governor Stitt referenced it earlier. I mean, the irony is it's good for America. You referenced, bringing business here. BASF, biggest chemical manufacturer in the world, investing in the U.S. There's a little company called Shell. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. And they've got a $4 billion chemical factory that they've just opened up outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Ironically, this shows where having a solid supply of stable, lower cost energy is not, as I've said on my show, it's not a part of the economy. It is the economy. If you don't have energy, you don't have an economy. And Germany will have energy, and Germany will be fine, but to your point, they may do it by deindustrializing.
Germany has been the industrial heartbeat of Europe for decades, and they've got to compete in a global market. They've got to compete against global competitors that are not saddled with the same labor costs, the same rigidities in work hours and rules and environmental regulations and energy costs. And so for them to compete, they need to have affordable and reliable energy, along with a lot of other things. And a lot of German companies are recognizing that has become so difficult now that they're moving investment to other parts of the world.
Like here, if X5 and X3, they're made in America already. You're probably going to have the 3 Series come here. Porsche's probably going to come here, which bullish for us. How do you run a company? And it doesn't matter which political team you're on. When every 4 to 8 years, our energy policy or lack thereof seems to change. How do you run a company when you've got to deal with just these wildly fluctuating policies?
Well, I see a lot of my peers out here that deal with the same thing. So there's people in this room that have been doing it for a long time. We're a long cycle industry. Our capital investments have lifespans that stretch over many administrations and therefore many changes in policy. And you have to try to see through that to the underlying trends on supply, demand, technology, where you think durable policy will go. And durable policy is not always easy to project because we tend to try to look for common sense, things that make good sense for the United States, and believe that over time we'll see policies that reflect that. But you also manage your risk by metering your investment. you don't invest into places with great uncertainty. You pull your investment back, you slow down the rate of investment. A company like ours, which operates around the world, can move capital out of the United States into other parts of the world where we see less risk and better returns. And so the cost of this policy incongruence is that it slows investment. And sometimes people, hear people say, well, the U.S. is, we're back up to record levels of production. With better policy, we would be beyond that. And so we really do need more consistency and more predictable and durable policy to enable what is the greatest sector of our economy and the biggest single lever to our ongoing global competitiveness.
And we have to do it in a responsible way. And I think you've said this a few times, and I think many of your peers in this room have said this. And if the oil and gas energy industry is not at the table in discussions about climate or emissions, then you're literally not in the discussion. Like your industry, I think you would agree, whatever people may think, has to be there. Otherwise, it's not going to advance in, I would argue, a scientific way.
Well, I heard the data cited earlier today that 80+% of the world still runs on fossil fuels. There's another way that I've heard people describe this, which is the world runs on energy system A today. And you hear a lot of people that would like to have energy system B, which is this lower carbon energy system, which is maybe 2 or 3% built. And will take a long time and a lot of capital in order to transition to that. And so to have the people that are responsible for building and investing in and operating and improving what runs the world today excluded from the conversation about how do you build up some of these new sources of energy, it doesn't make sense. This industry has the best engineers, the best project managers, the best technical capability, the balance sheets, and the human capacity to do just about anything. And so to pretend that it's possible to build a new energy system without leveraging the capabilities not only of companies that produce energy, but those of you that work with us in every aspect of our supply chains and our technology value chains, it's just not a realistic way to see things. And I try to tell people from both parties, look, we're not the enemy. We are business people, we're Americans, we're patriots, and we want our country to be strong and secure and viable, and invite us in. We're not always going to agree, but we're going to get to a better understanding if we have these conversations. It's hard, and not everyone believes that we have that role to play, but if you exclude this industry, you guarantee that we will not make the progress that we could.
And if I'm hearing you right, I think your message here to a lot of people in this room too is whatever they may think, they need to be active. It's not just they need to be actively engaged in the conversation. It's not just that needs to come to you, you need to go to them, and we need to have this conversation about building out energy in an environmentally friendly way. If you can do it in a way that's better for the environment and still make money, isn't that the right path?
That's what people in this room have done for their entire careers, is built out an energy system that provides heat and light and mobility and space heating and space cooling and all the things that are required, and do it in a way that has less impact on the environment. That's what we've always done. And it's what this industry will continue to do.
Yeah, well, I work for CNBC, and sometimes we talk about stocks. And I'm just a blimp, hopefully not the Hindenburg, which is hydrogen, by the way. And I just kind of hover around, and about 2 to 3 years ago, your industry was uninvestable. I mean, I watch the trends. Again, I'm not in the markets, don't own any stocks except for Comcast, my parent company. I have to disclaim that. But I see the trends. And your industry, completely uninvestable, it's over, forget about it. Without not being political, not being anything, I'm looking at Chevron, some of your competitors, stocks have been soaring. Some of the new energy stocks, ETFs, have been tanking. What's going on? Are we seeing a reversal? What are you hearing from investors? When they come to you, some of your biggest investors, your IR team, what questions are they asking?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there are a number of dynamics at work here. Over the last decade or so, our industry chased growth as opposed to value for shareholders.
You literally lit money on fire.
Well, not literally.
Not you, but like there were some people literally lighting hundreds with 20s.
Well, I don't smoke cigars, so I don't know how.
But they were
those
smoking
get lit.
hundreds, yeah.
So, but no. So look, there's a. We are accountable for the fact that we were not great stewards of capital for a period of time, and at the same time, money was free, and tech stocks you couldn't miss on technology, and so there was a pretty easy sector play for portfolio managers to just throw their money at any tech startup, which could discount theoretical future earnings back to today at almost zero cost of money. And they would look at our industry and say, look, you're not returning cash in the form of dividends. We don't think you're improving return on capital. You're a low growth industry. We expect a cash return out of your industry. And there's some validity to that point of view. The world's changed. Money isn't free anymore. Money has a cost. This industry has changed. Companies in this room are returning a lot of cash to shareholders, and you're seeing the market respond to that. And so valuations have improved. The stock prices of companies in our industry are higher. They are not yet high. There's a lot of room still to go, because if you look at the way our cash flows are valued by the market and the multiple that is put on this industry, it is still in the single digits.
It's weird, isn't it?
The S&P 500 is valued at a 15 or a 16 multiple. Companies, this part of the economy is valued at a 7 or 8. The tech stocks are still in the 20s. Our cash flows are not going away. Our cash flows are durable. The demand will be there. This is an industry that's become more capital efficient and will continue to deliver strong cash flows. We've got a generation of portfolio managers that grew up not having to understand energy. You talked about energy fluency earlier. I've got kids in their 20s and 30s now. I talked to a lot of portfolio managers in their 20s and 30s. Their whole investing life, it's been easy to throw money at tech, and they haven't had to understand other sectors of the economy.
Yeah.
They're going to have to begin to understand that. We've got to get out there and spend time educating them, and so that's on us. But I think that the somewhat of a reversion that you're starting to see isn't over yet. I think you've seen it begin, but there's more room to go.
If you're under the age of 42 or 45, roughly, there's a lot of people, by the way, hitters in New York that are running, or in Houston here, that are running a lot of money at 40 years old. They have never managed money in a rising interest rate environment their entire career. They go to Harvard, they go to Duke, Fuqua School of Business, whatever it is. They've never managed money in that rising rate environment. I'd love to talk a little bit more about valuations, because I know this guy named Harold Hamm. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. But he got very frustrated with, I think, probably lack, I don't want to speak for you, Mr. Hamm, of investor recognition of probably what Mike was just talking about. So you just say, screw it, we're going to go private. I got a buddy in Houston, Tillman Fertitta, who, his company is private, because they get frustrated that investors are not recognizing, why am I trading at 3 times revenue when this company that has no profits is trading at 20 times? It's interesting too, even with the gains, if you look at when oil was at 90 the last time, some of these ETFs were, say, at $1,000 a share. They're now at 300. They're up, but they're still 2/3 below where they were. Why are we still seeing a disconnect between the price of the underlying commodity and the price of the investments?
Well, I think it's the issues that we've been talking about. I mean, there are a lot of people that believe that, we're going to be using oil and gas for just a decade. I think I heard that in the State of the Union. And so if you're only looking at
couple more years
at those cash flows over a very, very short duration, you reach one conclusion. And I think that the movement to starve capital out of this industry, to convince people that this industry is going away, has gotten through to a lot of people. And a lot of the money managers you're referring to are still in need of a little bit deeper understanding of how this sector really works.
But how many of them do you think, and again, just not specific, just broadly, that if you met with today and just, if you showed them your company, or if you're Devin or Chesapeake or Nick, for anybody else that's in here, showed your numbers, no name, you don't talk about the industry, you have no logo, you just show them a blank Excel spreadsheet or print it out and say, would you invest in this company? 99% will say, yeah, I would. But then you put the Chevron logo on there.
Well, then you bring their stewardship team in.
Right, that's
Right.
it. You got to bring. So how many of those people do you think, it's rough, would say, Mike, your numbers are terrific, I just can't invest in fossil fuels? Half? Third?
No, people are underallocated. But look, most of the asset managers I talk to have got investments in fossil fuels. They're just underweight fossil fuels from where they ought to be. So I don't think that now look, there are endowments and there are people who,
Yes, the biggest in America,
upset.
and they're in your state. And I have great friendships with CalSTRS and CalPERS, particularly CalSTRS. Chris Ailman's a fantastic guy, comes on CNBC, great respect for him. They cannot invest in, they're divesting.
Well, there's talk and then there's actual behavior. Look, it's a little bit like my comments earlier about investing capital into our sector with an uncertain policy environment. I've got good friends at CalSTRS as well that I talk to, and they are underallocated. They are not out of energy. They're not out of fossil fuels, but they have a big battle inside their organization about how much capital to allocate to that, and we need to continue to deliver in the way we perform and show up. And look, this is kind of.
But it's not zero, right? It's not zero at
not
CalSTRS and CalPERS and
no, it's
each
not,
Illinois state pension
it's
fund.
not zero. And the interesting thing is, if you talk to the school teachers at CalSTRS, not the investment professionals, but the people whose retirements are being managed by CalSTRS, you get a little bit of a different point of view.
Such as?
Such as, we want returns. We don't have our pension. Our pension should not be used for social or political purposes. Our pension, that is my retirement. And I want the best return I can so my pension is secure and the money is there when I need it.
I think you make it, especially now with the move up that we've seen in energy stocks, to your point, if you're, the state of Illinois, and I'm not picking on Illinois, I'll be landing at O'Hare in about 4 hours. When they look and say, okay, I'm making the numbers up, we returned 3%, but if we had energy investments, we would have been up 8%. And to your point, that's real money for a teacher or a janitor or an administrator at these schools that they're leaving off the table to make some kind of a statement. Will there be enough investment dollars to bring your industry in line with other valuations? Or do you think this is permanently going to be kind of like, we're gonna trade at less than we're worth, but that's less than we're worth? No? Okay.
Very funny.
It wasn't. I'm a dad. It was a dad joke, and I'm a dad, so deal with it. But how do you just gotta go to your IR team and be like, well, this is what we're gonna get?
Well, I'll tell you, from my point of view, this is retail politics 101. I go out and I spend a lot of time on the road with investment houses, with portfolio managers, talking them through the basics that we're talking about. You can't, look, they haven't seen interest rates rising. They haven't seen energy the way that they should see it. We can't sit back and just assume that it will happen through osmosis or divine intervention. We got to get out there and work it. And so I spend a lot of my time, a lot more than my predecessors did, I'll tell you, on the road talking to people that make these decisions and helping them understand why they have an incomplete view of this industry, and I try to help them have a better view, a more complete view of this industry so they can invest. And look, I'm talking about the industry. As a CEO of a company, you're trying to help them buy your shares, you hope, but we need this whole industry to re-rate. There's only so much room within the industry for companies to differentiate. And so what I'm out there on the road all the time with the investment community is talking about this industry and why this industry is a vital part of our economy, why it's not going away, and why their investment dollars should flow into it.
Well, we got to wrap in a minute, but quickly, I'm heading to Detroit, going through Chicago. UAW strike is ongoing. We know there's a lot of issues at play here. You're in California. City near your headquarters, Petaluma, has banned the building of new gas stations. You could never build one there. I'm convinced everything you want to learn about life, you can learn from The Simpsons. And there's one years ago, decades ago, where the actor Ed Begley Jr., who's an environmental activist, like, what's that? And he gets it, he puts it on, he goes, it's a go-kart powered entirely by my own sense of self-satisfaction. And he zips away. In 20 years, what is the American fuel mix going to look like?
It's going to look an awful lot like it does
because the UAW
today
would like to know.
No, it's going to look an awful lot like it does today. We'll see more EVs. We expect EVs to continue to penetrate. There's a lot of government incentives to do it. They're still more costly than the alternative. There's a lot of infrastructure issues. There's a lot of supply chain issues on batteries. You know, all that was up there. You can do things at a small scale. The energy system is enormous. And so what they're going to find is that scaling this to the level that is expected is going to be more difficult and more slow. And that means the rate of change is going to be slower than what they can model in a spreadsheet. And so it'll look different than it will today. I think we'll have a more diverse mix. I think oil and gas will still be a very, very prominent part of it. And it will evolve slowly, not change abruptly.
Because this is what this fight, a lot of it's over. And I sit back and I look at Nissan, Toyota, and Honda, and they're kind of sitting out saying, you know what? Maybe hybrids are the answer. And by the way, maybe better environmentally as well, all in on the supply chain. We're done. In fact, we're over time. Mike Wirth, CEO of Chevron, thank you. Really appreciate the conversation.
Brian.